Hello, everybody. Welcome to August 11th Social Selling Hour. This is episode 14. We got episode unlucky, lucky 13 last week out of the way, so hopefully we can't, well, I guess we can't blame any of our glitches or malfunctions on episode 13, but happy to be here today. Hopefully everyone is doing well. We have, of course, the brains behind Social Selling Hour and the one that keeps us all in line. Rachel's here today.
Hey everyone.
And our special guest today, someone I guess I'm supposed to be getting to know, or at least know, Daniel Newman from Broadsuite.
Hey everybody, how are you? I did not make Brian invite me onto the show. Just want to say that up front.
This is true.
It was not even my idea.
This is true. This was a collaboration idea with Rachel and I. So especially from the standpoint of where this chat has gone and kind of what the blog post that we put together today on, we're kind of pushing the boundary of social selling as well as really what people are doing from Twitter chats to Google Plus Hangouts to really building the community. So, Daniel, with the two books that you've written and kind of your experience not only as a CEO of multiple businesses but also kind of talking about social selling, it was kind of a no-brainer for us, and it works out perfectly. It's exactly at 1 week from the day that I started at Broadsuite with you. So I guess give a little bit of your background that I didn't already steal your thunder on.
No, that's great. Hi everybody. My name is obviously Dan Newman. I am the founder of Broadsuite. Broadsuite was a company I started about a year ago when I saw a great opportunity to help brands be what I say found, seen, and heard online. But that's the only pitch I'll give. Otherwise, my background has always been in tech, B2B, collaboration, and one of my real passions has been how content and social is really driving the enterprise or driving the business sale through building trust, building communication, and getting customers to connect to your brand without necessarily needing to be physically in front of or on the phone. So I was really excited to talk about it. I wrote a book earlier this year called The New Rules of Customer Engagement, and one of my big trends was how informed consumers are basically changing the way the buyer's journey works, and social selling is a really, really big part of that. So you can find me on Millennial CEO, Forbes, Entrepreneur, Huffington Post, and a whole bunch of other places, including I think I've even been on Rachel and your blog, Pipeliner, once or twice.
Yep.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, well, we're glad you're here. We actually have a blog post up and live too. We'll make sure we get that tweet out. With the blog post up on Broadsuite, kind of giving a little bit background, some of those links, as well as giving some nice shout out to our previous guests, as we've been very lucky to have some great guests as well. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. I think, Rachel, you want to kick off with question one?
Sure. Q1, what should leaders and C-suite executives do with social and social selling programs?
That's a great question, and it's a big question. So I'm going to try to break it into a piece to relate specifically to social selling. One of the biggest faux pas I've seen inside of organizations, big and small, is that they try to talk about doing social, but they sort of miss the leadership aspect of the do as I say, not as I do. The statistics are out, and very few C-suite executives are actually nearly as active on social as they need to be. But for organizations that really want to see social take off, it's really about building an inside-out organization. I always say, your biggest advocates are your internal resources to build your social engine. Whether you have 5 employees, 10 employees, or 10,000 employees, you think about that, you wonder why some of these companies that have 10,000 employees don't have more influential social presences, and it's because social isn't an inside-out philosophy to them. It's being done in these little ISO pockets. And so in the C-suite, it's really important to talk about it and contextualize it, which is basically that people are making buying decisions, and it's across the spectrum. Right? When Forrester came out with that data that said almost 70 to 90% of a sale is done before they even talk to a brand, how is that first 70, 90% being handled? If your company is saying that social isn't relevant, well, then how are you getting them to your content? So, and that's the other thing, is that social and content and engagement are so closely married, and that any brand that's not kind of pairing the three of them together are missing a huge opportunity, which I'm sure we'll talk more about later.
I think it's a huge point. I mean, a lot of it really being, I think this actually it might have been just a study that came out yesterday that said 80% of C-suite in the top 500 don't even have a LinkedIn account. So it's not even that they're not even social. Like I even say that it's lazy man social is most of them have the LinkedIn account. But I mean, what's the excuse to not have a LinkedIn account in 2014, right?
I mean, obviously these guys are busy, having run companies, and never a Fortune 500 one, but, companies of substantial employee count and revenue. There's a lot. You don't have a lot of time for social, but at the same time, there's a lot of people interested in what you have to say. It's a vehicle. You're willing to spend tens of thousands of dollars for airtime on the media or the radio, paid channels, and what you may put out in 7 seconds in 140 characters could influence more people who are more connected to your brand. So it's kind of that whole busy excuse. I think I talked about this other day. It was a real hot topic, but about being busy and being effective is you can be really effective on social without being busy. I tell a lot of companies, the C-suites included, it can be a 5 or 10 minute a day investment, and it could still make a massive difference to your organization.
No, yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's, like the busy angle is an interesting one because, what other things are you doing throughout your day that you could, simply replace 5 or 10 minutes of, I think part of it being, close to many people's, in social selling, you're working, if you have the right tools and the right people in place, what says that you can't, narrate something in the car ride in, or if you can't, work with your team on a conference call to build you some of the things that you want to go out under your account. I know Rachel has lots of experience with that side, not only working personal branding side, but employees and the brand side, right, Rachel?
Yeah, it's just it's really just changing the mindset, especially with the C-level executives. They're more than willing to go to a networking event after hours and go past their 8-9 hour day, but they don't feel as comfortable spending 5 minutes tweeting or writing a blog post on LinkedIn. So I think it's just explaining to them the benefits, and it's the same networking capacity. You're just doing it on a different medium.
Right, and I think some of them, there's some genuine concern about the scrutiny because what you put on the internet is in red ink. It's not going to go away. So I think there definitely needs to be some planning and investment in what you're going to say. But I also think social has brought on a very human element to the network, and there's a lot of different buzzwords around this, but people want to talk to people. And there's so many pieces of social proof about people would rather follow a person than a brand. So, if the CEO is talking on a social channel versus a brand talking on a channel, there's a lot of people that might follow a CEO or a CMO or a CRO or whatever C that might not follow the brand because brands tend to be too strong on marketing where, the C executive may have something really profound or interesting to say.
Yeah, I agree. I think an engaging CEO can make a really boring brand exciting. And do a lot more than their marketing team ever could.
No doubt.
Yeah, and I think that's it goes perfectly into kind of leading in the question too, because too often a website or an executive will say at a keynote that they care about the community, they care about the customer, they want feedback, they want to be involved in the community, but yet they don't have accounts, they don't engage in channels that you're kind of in that are beyond your normal ones. I'll name drop just because it happened last night, but there was a dialogue going on Facebook with Robert Scoble, and Mark Cuban jumped in to kind of talk about his product, and then led into multiple discussions Mark Cuban was having kind of from a social aspect as a CEO and entrepreneur, sharing his insights on why he was investing in a tool. So I think it goes perfectly into kind of Q2 where it says, how much does the customer experience affect a social selling program? And I'll make sure to tweet out the slide share that we have that has kind of the social selling program, that kind of the 9 steps.
Well, I mean, you think about it, right? A lot of companies spend so much time and energy on new customer acquisition. But really, the majority of your business opportunities come from selling more to the customers you have and retaining the customers that you have. These are data points that have continuously over time proven themselves, whether you're talking about the 80-20 rule or the new 60-30-10 rule that just came out. But the bottom line is that we do a terrible job as a lot of companies actually retaining customers. So social selling is not just about actually trying to work a deal to the end of the funnel. It's also about that continued drip of information, that drip of inspiration, of showing your brand and showing your identity and reminding people about why they did business with you in the first place. You ever get that uncomfortable feeling like after a month or two of not really being in touch with a customer, so they're maybe paying you still, but you haven't talked to them in a while, and you're thinking, God, I really need to reach out to them and just make sure they're still happy. social is a great channel for that, to just keep that continuous presence, staying in front of clients, keeping that relationship, and letting them see what you're doing, letting them see what you're doing for them. And that, to your customer experience standpoint, that's huge, because clients don't leave. Customers do not leave. It's an empirical fact. They don't leave because of bad products and services. They leave because of bad customer experiences. That's like 70+%. Only like 15% of people leave business partners because of the product. So why we don't spend more time on a customer experience blows my mind. It continuously blows my mind. But you know what? I look at it opportunistically, because if companies don't want to focus on that, I'll focus on that. So, your indecision or inability to execute is my opportunity, is how I always see it.
No, I think that's kind of where, and I think I would even say the customer experience is your internal customers as well as your external, right? So like if your employees aren't your biggest advocates, aren't well educated, aren't trusted, aren't the ones that are kind of being empowered to not only in social selling but also engage the community, why would your customer think that you would invest and trust in them if you're not doing it with your internal customers first? I think that's a struggle a lot of leaders and brands have, and hopefully that trend is starting to be bucked.
Yeah, we all know that the customers, like the employee, is your number one customer. At least we all theoretically say it. A lot of executives, and I've definitely dropped the ball on this at times, fail to execute this in their organization. But in the world of social, getting your employees social, getting them to really feel like they're empowered to represent the brand, it can be a tremendous tool. But that works only when the culture is strong. So if the culture is weak, that will also become transparent and could actually make social a great detriment to your business.
So along those lines, Daniel, do you have any tips for how companies can keep that customer experience strong once they've acquired the customer?
Well, if you want to talk about strictly in the social realm, one of the great ways to do it is, continuous updates, providing clients opportunities to engage, creating, specific channels for support and service that you actually monitor and respond to, treating your call queues, your social queues, as much as like Comcast or some of these Cox or some of these communication companies can drive you crazy. They actually are tremendous at social conversation. Like, you tweet Comcast and you'll get a response within like 5 minutes. So you'll call them and wait like 2 hours. But if you tweet them, they get back to you right away. That's a great example for some businesses as a way to listen and pay attention. Other things are product reviews. I think the future of product development is going to be crowdsourced. I think your clients and communities are going to be the ones that tell you what you need to create next. In a microcosm, I'm sure that's to some extent how social CRM is being developed on your end. And I can certainly say that the products that we're developing, the products and services we're developing for companies, are highly based on the social listening and feedback that we're getting both directly from our community and the people we do business with, and then the people who are ideal customers to us by listening to them and what they're doing. So it's a great way to deliver customer experience. Just paying attention. Talk about content. They are telling you everything you need to hear. The question is, are you listening?
That's a great lead into question 3. What data should leadership and sales teams be looking on at social media?
Are you talking about like what type of data in terms of the response? Like what is the the ROI type metrics that clients and that customers can use or companies can use with their social activities?
Yeah, ROI or even just specific KPIs. Like how do you deem a campaign or their social efforts a success?
Right. Well, I think you have to look at every business as a little bit unique. And sometimes I feel like I get in trouble for saying this, like that you can't, there's not a one-size-fits-all for social. But I think depending on what your business is, the first thing I always say is the start of social efforts is where are your customers? Like I'm the last person to tell you like, hey, you need to be on Pinterest. If your customers aren't on Pinterest, don't be on Pinterest. But the first thing is where are they, right? And then it's understanding how are you actually targeting and connecting with these customers. So in the earliest stages of a social campaign, and I don't really like the word campaign. You'll hear me, I'll talk about drip marketing because I like that constant drip, not any sort of spike. But it's who are we targeting? Who's the audience? How are we trying to reach them? What are we doing to reach them? So the first part is really about, the understanding, and there's a little bit of investment there. The second part, then, the measurement comes down to how are we connecting with these people? So, there's a lot of spray and pray is what I call it. We spray content all over the internet and hope somebody engages us or responds. But the first thing I want to measure is who are, as a B2B, I might say, who are the 10 people I really want to connect with and get in front of? And then how do I measure that? So maybe it's a matter of going out and following them across a number of channels and then saying how many of them connected back with us. Then the next step may be how many, you reach out to people, and you don't just reach out, like the direct messaging death that I call, like you follow somebody and they direct message you, buy my book. No, that's not how it works. But you might reach back out to them and say, hey, it's great connecting with you, and then try to ask them a thoughtful question. Take a little time and invest in them. Be like, I love your product, or I love what I've read about your product. It'd be great to connect further with you, or say something more meaningful than just, why are you here, or some of those stupid, some of those unideal responses that you get on Twitter.
That's what caused me to come up with that hashtag Show You Care. Was like people were like, what do I gotta do? It's like, just find a way to show you care. Like if it's researching, it's Googling, if it's using tools like Nimble, or if you're creating a digital footprint. I used to create calendar notifications, and I would have Evernote notes that would be like, hey, I love this tweet from this person. I know I'm going to reach out to them in the future. I'm going to build myself this little portfolio of awesomeness, I called it, where I can say, hey, I really appreciate you engaging me last week in this Twitter chat. By the way, did you know I had this, or did you know we should be doing this? I think that's the angle that's skipped over when these stupid auto DMs and these people that, or even the fact that because I connected with you in 2 different social networks, all of a sudden it means now we're best friends, and you're not only going to ask for something, but you're going to expect an answer like in 5 minutes and ask the question again. Like that stuff is, I think it's interesting too, just from like that idea is that, like Rachel, your title being chief listener, I think that's a forward-thinking company has to embrace something like that. What are your thoughts, Daniel, kind of just on that idea of, a data being, more than just the big data that we talk about. It's a lot of the, telling the story with the data.
Well, I talk a lot about how big data is going to be used to sort of reshape the future of marketing. Because it all comes back to one-to-one. I really do think the future of marketing is really about one-to-one. Big data is what's going to enable us to actually deliver more one-to-one type of marketing. So it's personalization. It's the other day. It's knowing who am I trying to connect with, why am I trying to connect with them, how do I try to connect with them, and then how do I make it meaningful. So the other day I had someone in the marketing and PR department at Dell follow me, and I immediately saw it popped up. I had it in my notifications. And so what I did was I basically followed back, and then I sent a quick note, and I said, I wrote an article recently about how Dell is really good at social. You know what I'm saying? And then I sent the link to the article and started the conversation based that way. So it's a combination. I was listening to the data. I'd already set the filters and the insights. Who are the kind of people I want to know when they follow me? How do I connect back with them? What's a meaningful conversation look like? And then how do you drive that forward? And that's the last KPI, is like, what is return, right? There's everything from the fact people out there that say you need a strict return on your social investment, and they're looking to actually measure every activity. And then there's the other people who, like our friend Ted Rubin, who has a lot of great ideas but says return on relationship. And he's really not interested at all in measurement. He's interested in just saying if you do the right things over a long period of time, you will get a return. And to some extent, he's done that if you just look at his body of work. But, my point is a lot of companies need to show some return. So for a lot of the businesses I deal with, for instance, I might say, how many engagements, how many conversations did you start? How many coffee meetings did you set up? How many and this includes talking to your current clients, going back to the customer experience thing. Like social is a great way to touch your client, and going back and selling more to an existing client is just as good as a brand new client acquisition, which is something so many companies drop the ball on.
No, I agree. Retaining a customer is, what they say, it's cheaper than acquiring new ones. So
it's actually 6 times cheaper. It's 6 times cheaper.
There you go. Write that down.
The old CEO that I had would always say, have you talked to someone that's keeping our lights on today? And I always thought that was a good one, because it was like that reminder that your paycheck is getting cut because of the people that you have as current customers, not as future customers. So just reaching out to them and making sure that they're continued to be happy. And I can't stand how many people ask, like, I want evangelists, I want ambassadors, I want all these things, yet they're not willing to even empower their best and their biggest fans, which are the ones that are paying their money to you to do a service today.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll jump on to question 4 now. Question 4, we have how do sales teams get leadership buy-in on social selling programs? And I think really what this stemmed to is, I called it last week when Barb was kind of talking. I said, how can I make my boss look good? And really, we all end up teaching change. We end up getting pushback or someone saying, you don't need to stare at your Twitter timeline all day and consider that doing your social selling. But I think getting leadership buy-in is what a lot of people are struggling in, because not only do you have to prove immediate value, but oftentimes leadership will think of what, and I say management and leadership being two different ones, but they'll often think of social as either what their kids have told them or what the paranoid news channels that they're reading, or the ones that jump off the deep end for no reason. So how do you kind of talk that, Daniel, or how do especially from the workforce is being majority being millennials now, and not only from a that angle, but also millennial leaders are also coming there now, and so you have leaders that are millennials as leaders that are from an older generation. How do you kind of get that buy-in across the board?
Well, the millennials aren't the majority yet, but we're working towards it. Let's just say that. I think it goes back, and this is probably going to be one of the less profound answers, but one of the most important questions perhaps, and that's it comes back to education. I think the vast majority of leadership doesn't understand the selling or the buyer's process. I talk a lot about the new buyer's journey, and I gave that stat earlier. About 70 to 90% of the sale is often done before a vendor is engaged. Now, obviously, it's different for a transactional activity than it might be for buying a software package or a cloud service, right? But the bottom line is the way people are buying has changed. And I always say to people, just think about your experience. Think about how you buy things, whether it's, I love using a car as an example, but just online. I mean, the first thing most people do now is they jump on Google, they search things out, they go through a lot of the process themselves long before they ever get up and pick it up. We just, as social as we are, we really like to learn for ourselves. And then the biggest influencers in our purchase decision aren't the people trying to sell to us. It's our friends, it's our family, it's other people who we trust, right? So if brands are out to get trust, they need to kind of try to become our friends. I mean, is ultimately what they do. And that's kind of where content and social selling becomes really imperative, because if you think about it, right, you think about some of the smartest brands. I go back to like CMO.com. Well, CMO.com is an Adobe company. It's an Adobe website, right? But a lot of marketing leaders go to CMO.com to read every day to get educated. So you're inherently building this trust with a brand. And this is happening more and more. This is kind of that evolution of brand journalism, as I like to call it. But, I mean, the long and the short of it is brands that want to build trust to therefore move you through that selling process need to build that relationship with you, and they need to just understand how you buy. So I went into a big kind of circle there, Brian, but the long and the short of it is you want your CEO on board. He didn't get to CEO by saying, oh, social is cool, we should do some social, dude. That's just not how it happens. You need to, just like any other major initiative, you need to validate it and then build social proof. And that social proof would come through getting a few people involved, as the guys in Consumption Economics, which is a good book, said, it's called Land and Expand. Do it in a small vacuum within the company, get it going, and build it out bigger and broader throughout the organization.
Okay, and I think that's kind of, that idea is, I think that's really where we need to go in a lot of things. And Vincent Orlek, one of my buddies from out here in Arizona, used to work with him, and he had a good comment and question. I think this is something good for you, Daniel, is, today is the buy-in harder for the sales teams to get the sales teams buy-ins, because the sales teams have a regimen and a way that's always worked. Although every time I hear someone say that it's the way they've always done it, I believe they deserve to be straight kicked in the face, because the way you've always done it doesn't mean it's going to work tomorrow. But who's the tougher sell today? Is it the leadership buy-in, the one that's going to give you the power to kind of educate and empower the sales team, or is it the sales teams who are kind of stuck in their ways of old?
Well, it's never one thing. It's every organization one by one. I have a couple of clients that have terrific leadership that just embrace and they love the idea of social, and they're having an extremely hard time getting it evangelized throughout their sales organization. They have, whether it's more experienced salespeople that have been doing it away for a long time and don't want to change. In some cases it's compensation. They need to be killing right now, and social selling might be seen as a longer process, nurturing that channel. I think every organization is unique, and I think you have to look at that unique case and say why. At either end, though, it's about education and channel. For sometimes like older, more experienced salespeople who are very familiar with the more direct selling model of going out and calling on people, they're just not comfortable on social channels. They don't feel comfortable finding articles and sharing them on LinkedIn or tweeting. And to some extent, it could go a long way if they just actually stop to explain it. You know, that's one part of the work that we've got to do if we want to really educate social selling is we've got to teach people how to do it and, you know, as I said before, why it works. Because just saying, hey, start tweeting is probably one of the most intimidating things in the world to somebody who's not active or not very active in social media.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Like Tim McDonald, shout out to him jumping in, social selling hour today, and he said, jumping in for a couple minutes. I'm not the one who sells. I just build relationships. And I, of course, started laughing out loud because that's why I sell for him. And I know we're all three big fans of Tim and how he kind of builds communities and relationships. And I think that's the underlying principle there is if you can follow the Ted Ruman R&R and get those relationships where you can prove value. I will continue to say that you have to screenshot awesomeness, like screenshot every time someone engages with you online. I was taking documents. I remember writing in Evernote saying like, hey, this person recognized me at a live event, and he's the CIO of a company, a big company, Amazon, and he came up to me and said, hey, I know who you are. You're iSocial fans. And it had nothing to do. He just walked by me, and he had an entourage of people. And to me, I wrote that down in Evernote, sent an email to my CEO, and said, I just got social media ROI. To me, that is, that was that element. And I think it goes that way for all of your small wins, all of the things that you're kind of getting across the board. Because, as those things are continuing to happen, we have to be able to teach change. I think that's the element there for sure. I know when I'm even looking at the community of people that are asking questions and kind of jumping in here. I think a lot of the people that I hear is some people say, well, those are all great tactics. Those are all great things that Dunkin' Donuts does. Those are great things that Lowe's does. But you know what? B2B, it doesn't work that way. Or give me an example of B2B. Like that's kind of where people kind of step on. So what's kind of your answer to that, Daniel? And I know Rachel has lots of her work is with her customers on being that B2B relationship as well.
Well, almost 100% of BroadSuite's client is B2B. So it's all in the tech space and it's all in B2B. And, I think it's a profound misconception that it doesn't work for B2B. The problem is doing it the way B2C does it doesn't necessarily work for B2B, right? I always say, like, I think I mentioned earlier, why are we trying to boil the ocean instead of just a pot of water? So a lot of times in B2B, it might be, who are the 5 target customers you really want to go after, right? And then how do you socially engage them? Just use LinkedIn, right? I'm not saying you don't use other channels. I'm just saying here's a starting point. Here's an idea for B2B. Start with LinkedIn. Who are you connected with inside of those 5 organizations that you're trying to get to? And then how do you communicate with them? Are you connected to the right people and the right decision makers? And have you shared with them anything other than your attempt to sell to them? I always say, like, there's almost every customer I ever worked with and acquired, I use social selling methods. I would either write articles or I would find content and share it with them where, I was talking to them about why they needed to blog or why they needed to have social automation or why they needed to build community. And then what I would do is I would share articles with info from Zero Moment of Truth by Google or the Forrester findings that I talked about earlier. And I would basically show them, I'm like, look, guys, this isn't me just telling you this because I want to sell you something. Let me educate you. Because the bottom line is when you truly want to help somebody, it does work. And that was a perfect example of using content and social and engagement to actually drive a sales forward. But if you try to go like Dunkin' Donuts, no, you can't run a 49-cent coffee after 3 o'clock promotion as a B2B to try to sell software. You've got to inform, inspire, and educate first. And you can do that in a microcosm. In a lot of B2Bs, if they would just say, who's my 1 target, 5 targets, 10 targets, and treat that as their social selling initiative rather than trying to emulate B2C companies, I think they'd have a lot more success.
No, I completely agree. I think B2B companies kind of have an advantage in a way with social selling, but they really need to take a step back and audit their existing customers, find out where they are, what touch points worked, and then duplicate that. And that's your program, and then you can slowly scale that and attract new customers.
Right, and then don't forget one-to-one. That every one of these, it's like taking the physical selling experience online. Meaning that first call is where you're building trust, right? If you walk right into that first sales call and you say, hey, I'm ready to, you guys ready to sign off, that only works like 1 in a million times, right? Every other time you're in front of the client, you needed to have that first conversation. You need to get to know about the person, the buyer, who are their kids, their family, what do they like to eat, take them golfing to the bar. It's like, I always say, how do you take someone golfing online? How do you take someone to the bar? And people say, oh, you can't do the offline stuff online. I'm like, but you kind of can. It's just having an ongoing relationship and conversation online. Like, stop by, share our stuff, like our stuff, make a comment on something that they said. Look up, go to their website and read about something and say, hey, I thought this was really interesting. I got this off your site, really cool, or good project. That's super cool. You're sort of like flirting online with them. Whatever you want to call it, but build that relationship.
I frequently call it wooing.
Woo me.
I woo people for a living.
People woo us all the time. I mean, God, all the people that want our content or people that want to post stuff on our sites, I mean, they're just pandering. But you know what? To some extent, people like to be, people like the feeling of attention. So give them attention. It's amazing how well that works.
Right, but I think you make it look easy, but it's a discipline. And I think that's what scares a lot of people when they're starting out with social selling. They might find those 5 core people, but how do you stay top of mind without making it look forced and robotic?
One of the things I love to do is just once a week, I pick 3 to 5 people in my network. I find a great piece of content. I curate it. I send it through LinkedIn as a direct message. It's not completely custom because it's almost like, hey, I really thought this was a great article, completely relevant to you. And it is to that person. But it's almost a copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. It takes me 2 minutes. I send out to 5 people. And then if I don't hear from them, and I hear from them like half the time, like 50% of the time they'll respond. And the other half the time, if I don't hear from them, I'll just reach out and say, hey, did you get that article I sent you the other day? I think it was perfect for you. Let's catch up when you have 5. And it's making small asks. I've always said, going back to my days of early sales when I was carrying a bag, it's always about making reasonable asks. I hate to get into salesman mode because I agree with Tim about relationships and just that's really what ends up selling them. But it is those little asks that build little bits of trust. And over time, it's that little ask, little give, little ask, little give. We're just taking that from the physical to the digital world.
Yeah, I think so. That's actually a good one. It kind of spurred a question just from me on that side, which I think it's often I heard everyone is familiar with Gary Vee and jab, 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 right hook. And is there a case that you could jab too much and not make the right hooks to where it's almost, and I used this earlier, and I'm going to use it again just because it got the point home, but it's when you're dating, and all of a sudden now you've turned the relationship into feeling like you're a brother-sister relationship instead of the person to take home. Like, where does that, how do you balance that, continuing giving to where you feel like, okay, I'm just being used for this asset compared to someone that's, jabbing along the way, asking for little things, even it's as simple as a retweet or, hey, did you see this article? What are your thoughts on that side?
I mean, I think that any selling expert will tell you that at some point you've got to close, right, the business. I've sort of taken an opposite approach, but it's weird because I actually believe that if you do all the right things along the way, eventually the customer's going to ask you to buy, right? We've gotten into that world that like people don't really want to be sold, they want to buy. So you almost need to open up the doors to allow them. I mean, it's obvious follow-up and communications like, hey, are we ready to do some business? It's the fair questions in there, but I think that jab, jab, jab is part of the lifelong customer experience, right? Eventually if you knock them out with great support and service and experience, then, hopefully you keep them, and that's the retention side of things. But, right, customer service is always about, we sell you and then we give you customer service. Customer experience is about the entire life cycle, which for a lot of businesses, the idea is that the life cycle is from that first point of contact to infinity as you hope to continue to do business with them for, as long as possible, if not, forever.
All right, let's jump to Q5. How do you build content differently for social selling initiatives versus marketing initiatives?
I don't know if there's a great delta there. I think I'll let you guys chime in after I kind of give you my take on it. I think because social selling really is about informing, at least as far as I've seen it, right? Social selling is about that continued touch points, that continued information. Marketing, let's go back and talk about how social media became social media marketing, right? When it was in its early days, social media was about conversations, about creating a digital place for people to communicate and connect. Somewhere along the lines, marketers decided that social media was a channel for us to just spam the crap out of people.
It's ruined it, right? That's what they do.
All the things that we wanted it to do. So,
hey now.
Well, we're marketers, right? We're salespeople and marketers. I mean, I think the biggest thing about social selling that I might say differs from just pure marketing, it's kind of the ask versus the inform. To be effective at social selling, to some point, you need to have some sort of ask of people. Like, you got to have that return, because if you just are constantly just pushing the content out and you never give them something to take action on, then to some extent you become a media outlet. And while I think there's a huge play for brands to be media outlets, I think at some point you have to say, well, how do we eventually engage and do business together? And I think for social selling to be effective, you at some point need to say, hey, I'd love to do business with you. Here's a way to start. And that could be anything from getting an opt-in to a demo or a trial to legitimately saying, like, click here to buy. I think a lot of times with marketing, it can be more about a pure informational play. But I'd love to hear your take, because I've never really looked too deeply into the differences between the two.
I think one of the key differences for me is when creating content specifically for social selling, there's a lot more, it's a case studies. It's more showcasing that I know you and I can help you because I help this person just like you. And building off that referral. Whereas true just marketing content, yeah, there's a call to action, but it's usually, it's less about them and more about me. So I think with social selling, it's a softer approach, and it makes you more of a trusted advisor than just like pushing a product.
And I think a lot of what when I came into social, and really what I was kind of focusing on is I was a trainer, and I would use social to train. It gave me a new way, using social business tools to educate the community, and then using social media tools to educate the community. And I say community being both, because I consider internal employees and external customers as a large community. And when you think of selling, there's an element of, like, are you providing value, and then are you educating, or are you just letting them know brand awareness? Like I often say, if a client wants to work with me or asking me, hey, how did this work? You really do have to tie your goals and strategy back to business goals. And when I think of a marketing strategy, I think of a lot of times, I think today there's so much content being created by everyone and everything, which is why I really like to use that term, upcycling great content, instead of just putting out a bunch of average content. But for marketing versus selling, if you're providing value and being the person that is someone that's looked at as even a thought leader, when someone needs to go and ask for advice on the next tool they're going to purchase, they know that Rachel Miller is not only interviewing and talking to the people that are leaders in social selling, but she's someone that's tapped in, and that's a resource that I'm going to use. And that's I think a social selling aspect that is still kind of hard to quantify, because what data is going to tell you that being someone that's looked at as a person that is relied on for knowledgeable and unbiased information, like, how do you quantify that? But I think marketing doesn't really think about that aspect of content, at least in my experience.
Great answers. I mean, obviously, as the guest, I'd love to jump in and give you guys a nugget or two, but I treat content pretty altruistically, and it's kind of a give, and if I'm doing it right, people are going to want to connect, and then it's up to me to execute on those connections. I publish every day. I hit publish literally every day of something somewhere.
He does. I can attest to it now that I've been working with him for a week.
And I write a lot of stuff and put it out in a lot of places, because just same as everybody that's probably listening on this call, I want to build that social currency and be able to use it in a way. But I don't really write to sell. I write to inform.
Boom, right there. That's the tweetable right there. You're writing to inform. And I remember even when I was talking to you before we became partners, and I said, one of your writing strategies, one of the things you first said is, I don't write for SEO. And I don't write to to sell. It's I'm writing to inform. And I remember like writing that down as a note, like, yep, that's the difference of why when I read your stuff, I don't feel like a I'm at a used car salesman lot, I feel like I'm getting educated, inspired, motivated, or even oftentimes, maybe it's just shedding light on something that I already remember.
I never want people to shake my hands and feel they need to count their fingers afterwards.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And actually, there's I had to pull in a tweet here from Paul Frampton. We have the hashtags flying across on SS Hour today, so I appreciate everybody jumping in. And actually, I think we have every guest that we've had on here in the community chatting with us. So I can say that is an awesome feeling. So thank you to especially our guests that are jumped back in. But Paul Frampton made this comment, and I had to pull it aside. It said, social media offers unique ability to listen and observe equivalent of the conversations in bars all around world in real time. And I love that because when someone asked me about, hey, I was like, where do you sell best? And I remember my dad taught me golf at 13 because he said he gets a majority of his business, he's a candy salesman, on the golf course. And for me, I can now have that same conversation, same relationships with no boundaries, and I'm not limited to a foursome. And I promise I won't be drunk by hole 16. So I think there's lots of value there instead of it being the selling on the golf course. And John Golden had another one there. He said we have to there has to be some advance or progression. The ones with progressions are the ones that will prioritize, and others will nurture. So kind of along that idea where we have to not only educate and inspire, but you also have to kind of push that across the sales cycle, across the sales line.
Yeah, I just think the fact is you got to time your ask well.
That's a good
it's like anything you want in your life. If you ask for it at the right time, you have a better chance of getting people to say yes. If you've broken down that trust barrier sooner, the chances are when you are ready to get that ask, they're going to be more likely to say yes. These 0 moment of truth things that people engage with, like 10.4 pieces of content during the buying cycle. So if you think about that number, right, 10.4 pieces of content, it's like how far along are they? Now, again, there's certain transactional things. Selling candy, probably a little bit different than selling CRM packages, right? But the bottom line of it is that if you've helped them come along, become educated, become informed, and better understand how your product or how the product category is going to solve their business problem, then you're going to have a better chance of getting to yes. I always say people don't sell technology to solve technology problems. They sell technology to solve business problems. So being that I'm focused in the world of technology and B2B is I'm focusing on how am I helping them solve a problem that they're having with their business, not with technology.
It's funny. I mean, we've had this whole conversation in as many Twitter chats as I get involved in, which is far too many in many aspects. It's funny how we can be talking new trends in HR, we can be talking new trends in technology, we're talking social selling today, and all of these things end up coming down to people, trust, and culture, right? It always seems like that way. And when someone asks why you really like using social to do something, it's I always think of it's like, hey, it's a great way to communicate and have conversations because I think that's the element that we have there. And I mean, even I think the funny part was, in the Twitter feed here, there's all kinds of people. Your nugget where you say, I don't write to sell, I write to inform. I think that's the tweetable that I will definitely, one of the ones that I will take away as we, kind of jump into the next question. I think
an hour, Brian. I told you in an hour I'll give you one tweetable nugget.
Hey, that means I don't have to re-question my decision on a week ago.
What is the net?
Yeah, that's scary. I hope I said at least like 3 smart things.
Well, yeah, that's not. So, Rachel, you want to jump to that next question?
Yep. Q6. What role does customer engagement play in a sales program today?
I think we've covered a little bit of this, but I think the fact is that customers, relationships, selling, they all are just so heavily blended together, right? In the new rules of customer engagement, the whole premise I made was that there are some rules changing the way people are buying. So the first one is that the early stages of engagement isn't necessarily about reaching out and immediately letting people know you want to do business. It's about reaching out and immediately letting people know that you want to help them with their journey. It's understanding people's expectations for immediacy, better expectation setting. One of the biggest failures in life is that we don't set good expectations for people. It's the same in a social selling program is what can someone expect that connects, follows, engages with your brand? Like how are you going to actually help them through, right? Brian, I think we were talking to one up-and-coming cloud company, which I'm not sure we can publicize, but how they're trying to rethink the way someone engages with cloud. right? So they're creating videos that are very, very simple to consume, because the biggest problem is cloud is actually a very simple idea, but because it's technology, we tend to make it really complex. You know, and then furthermore, then it's driving them through and basically saying, how do you stay connected to us, stay informed by us, and become a part of this kind of evolving sales process, so that ultimately, as the journey comes to a close, we're coming to it together. So it's engaging in touch points at every part of the cycle. For each individual product, it's kind of understanding what are those touch points, right? Is it information heavy? Is it heavily leaning towards that early stage of giving them a lot of information, which then they can quickly take action and close? Or is it a very, very long cycle where it's, you know, getting them informed, getting them to try something, going in and providing big data analytics on how it might work for them, you know, and then coming back in and working on adoption from the inside out, and then more metrics, you know, and understanding that. And so how do you map touch point? Because customer engagement isn't again, it's another one-size-fits-all fail. It's one of those things you have to really understand. What are your systems of engagement for your product? Where are the engagement points in the sales cycle? And how are you aligning with your customer at every part of the way?
I guess this is where I can go in and leverage that our week of working together, where, you know, one of the things that surprised me, Daniel, from what you're doing at BroadSuite, and I think this is a trend, is that, you know, you're not locking clients or customers into long-term contracts, and I was surprised to hear that. And I think you know, your reasoning for that is really that element of, you know, the customer experience, the customer engagement, the community is going to be is going to sink or swim you. I just kind of give your reasoning on that, because I think that really plays into question 6.
Yeah, so one of the things when I developed the business is, you know, I have a chapter in my book. It's called Crushing Barriers to Entry. And I basically said, you know, that technology is sort of changing the way people consume, right? In marketing and sales, in any service, really, the history was we wanted to lock someone into a contract. I want to provide you services for the next 5 years. I want you to rent space for the next 5 or 10 years. And there are certain industries where maybe that makes sense. But then, like, you think about disruption, right? So last year, T-Mobile came out with a Jump program. And they basically said, we're going to completely disrupt, because the way we as T-Mobile make money is we make money on service. We don't make money on selling you phones, and we don't make money on losing customers. Even those early terminations aren't really the way we make money. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to go out and buy you out of your contract. We're going to let you have a new phone every 6 months, because that's not where we make money. We make money by having as many subscribers as possible, spending $100, $200, $300, $2,000, $3,000 a month on their services. They crushed every barrier to entry. There was no reason on the planet somebody couldn't just switch over. They would pay you out of your termination fees. They gave you a brand new phone, and their rates were equal, if not less, than most of their competitors. I said the same thing with my business. It's like, look, word of mouth is super important to your business, right? If customers are unhappy, they're going to tell people about it. So that's the first problem. I didn't want to have anybody under contract with me that didn't like working with me, because their user-generated words against me are probably going to be more harmful than the benefit of continuing to bill them for a certain period of time. The second thing that came down to is this: I don't want to work with people that don't want to work with me. And I think we've entered that kind of society where we've got to work with people who want to work with us. That's the only way we're effective. And I'm sure there's people out there that are going to disagree with me about this, but so far the attrition's been almost nothing, and in the cases where we've left, it's been mostly on good terms. So, you know, I looked at what they were doing in another industry, which is cloud, but I said these are services. And, you know, whether it's Microsoft 365, GoToMeeting Pro, or your phone service, people are able to get in, try, experience, expand, and then leave for no reason. But these companies say, look, if we do a great job and our service works as sold, they tend to stay longer. Not sure.
No, I think that's a huge value, and I think that's really where, you know, as we talk about, you know, people, you know, content as a service, or something where people are getting overwhelmed, you know, how does a small business or startup keep up? We heard that question a lot last week, where it said, you know, these are great when you have content machines that are working for these large enterprises where they have 30, you know, IBM has more social employees online than probably every other company combined. But, you know, like these small businesses and these, you know, these startups, where if you're looking at it and you're able to provide, you know, purchase content as a service, and you understand your community, where you're putting out content that is of value, and then, you know, you're using, you know, upcycling that to putting that in different avenues in different ways, and you're solving those problems. I think that's really where this, you know, the sell becomes not only the customers continue to be vouching for you. But if you look at the great social media tools, for example, online, if you look at Hootsuite, Buffer, and Sprout Social, just 3 that I'll put out there, they've not only had a dedication to community, but they engage and care, and they know because their customers are social media. But there's lots of other social media tools and social media companies that are writing programs and tools that have no social engagement or communication. I won't name those. I'll just name the good ones. I'll keep the good ones on my side and not throw the other ones under the bus. But I think it kind of leads into kind of question 7, where this is the last question we have here. We'll see if we can pull in a couple questions from the Twitter side, where it says, how should leaders change their sales programs based on the growing number of millennials connected customers that are targeting? The idea here is that the customer is not the same customer as yesterday. My daughter at 4 years old has an iPod Touch that's connected to Wi-Fi, right? So that's not the same customer that we had before. One of the things I thought was funny is my mom was at a PGA Tour event, LPGA Tour event, and she takes a screenshot that she got a pop-up whenever she was walking between holes, and it was an outfit for the LPGA was sponsoring, and she said, I want to purchase this. Social media just won me over, Brian. And I started laughing because I was like, wow, that's my mom. Was not the target audience. I guarantee of that originally. But how do you think leaders need to? I wouldn't even say change the sales program. Maybe change how they measure the program.
Well, I think the first thing goes back to an earlier topic we discussed. It's audience understanding. I mean, you need to change. You need to think about who's your audience now. For instance, I did a lot in the audio-visual, video collaboration, telepresence space. That was a lot of my business. And 10 years ago, your audience was actually like multimedia and AV specialists. These were guys that were literally your prototypical AV cart pushing geeks, were the ones making buying decisions for these massive corporations, projectors, video conferencing. Today, it's the CIO. It's the director of IT and the CIOs of companies. You say, what is a CIO? What are they interested in? What are they worried about? What do they want to learn about, right? So if you're selling these products, you may be number 35 on their initiatives list. So how do you work your way up their initiatives list to become more relevant? Audience understanding is one thing I think companies just flail at. They just don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. One of the best ways to do it is talk to your customers. Like, you have customers today. I can't tell you how many companies have no internal controls for actually asking their customers. I say, why does somebody buy from you? I had a great company I worked with that was doing elasticity as a service for data center. And I asked him one question. I said, why do people buy from you? And he could not, for the life of him, tell me. He could not tell me within any means why someone would actually were buying his product. He just said, "Oh, it solves this need, right?" Okay, well, why do they stay with you? I don't know. I said, "Why don't you ask them?" And he was almost like alarmed that I want to talk to the customers on his behalf. I'm like, "We should talk to your customers." So, for small and medium companies, some of the people on this call that are saying, it works great for Fortune companies with huge market research departments and stuff, there's a great start. Talk to the customers and companies you have. Learn what makes them happy, and then adapt your program to support that. A second thing I will say, and I write a lot about this, and Brian, maybe you can share this because I know we're short on time, is making big data work for small business, right? There's a lot of tools now for data visualization that could help companies actually better understand data that might give them more clarity into their clients. Like, if you don't want to take the time to talk to people, at least look at the data and see what it's telling you. And there's a lot of micro big data solutions that even for just a few $1,000s, a small company could invest to get clarity or insights on something they may have not known that could help them adapt or change their program.
I mean, it's funny. I think you said talk with customers every single time, and I can't tell you how many times when I first was working with the group that I was working with before a couple of years ago, and they kept saying talk at customers. So I think you said it. It's talking with customers, and it's amazing how if you use data to tell a story, the customers will tell, that data will help tell, just like you're talking with the customers. But the key is that you have to have kind of both sides. I've always kind of felt that, I say it often that my boss had that sign above his desk that said, data is so freaking what? If you didn't give him data that had, value, that provided a decision, that told a story, he didn't want to hear it. And it was in the cybersecurity world, and I've morphed that into social because I think that's, along the same lines. And talking with the customers. I mean, I know Rachel spends a majority of her day actually. The quick background on this chat is that I, was interested in the tool that Rachel was working at with another company, and and I was reaching out asking questions about that, and Rachel engaged me, giving me feedback, giving me links to a PDF that could help me answer more questions, and then the next day checked in to see if I got value from those PDFs. And I remember that strictly because I was like, man, apparently, and I was using it for free. I wasn't even paying for the solution at the time, and I was in the 30-day trial. And I was like, if she cares that much about me using the tool today, I'm gonna really put my my hat on and really use the tool. And I tell you what, 30 days later, I was a paying customer. And I think that's a great example. And you create a relationship. Right now, look at 14 weeks into a chat, and we have I posted on Twitter, but we had over 30 viewers on Google Plus tuning into us today, and then the Twitter feed has been flying through. So as we kind of wrap up, we have about 5 minutes left. Rachel, I think part of the thing that we've kind of been talking about, and really reason that we kind of formed this chat together was that we wanted to have a chat that had takeaways, that gave people something when they left this chat. They had something to change. They want to go back to their desk, go back to their boss, go back to their sales program. So I guess, Daniel, your the kind of last side there is what's one thing the community as a whole can do, or maybe change something differently to kind of make their lives with social selling a little bit easier.
I want to give you one idea and then one data point that I think is really fascinating.
All right, I'll let you. Maybe it's just because we're partners, but go ahead.
Hey, that's over quota.
All right. Well, you can cut it. You can edit it out later. So the first thing is starting small. Like, I think people try to eat the elephant in a single bite, and I think for a lot of businesses that want to get social selling initiatives going, it's thinking small. Like, I talk to companies like, get every salesperson to connect with 5 clients and send out 5 useful articles, or 1 useful article to 5 people in a week. That's a starting point for social selling. And just start informing and inspiring, finding good content and sharing it. That's a great start. It's not going to end or change anything massively, but if you have an organization that's sort of resisting, it's a small ask. It can be done in a short amount of time, and it can be extremely effective. So that's one thing, just as an idea or takeaways. Don't think you have to, solve the whole thing today. Whether I use the elephant or the boil the ocean analogy, there are small steps to successfully building social businesses. And the second thing is I want to give 2 valid data points on why you need to get back with your customers. One is because customers do not see you as differently as you think they do. And in fact, in this one study, they said 80% of businesses think that their customers see them as highly differentiated. But when they ask these customers, only 8% of customers actually see their vendors as highly differentiated. So you got to talk to your customer and really get back to why they do business with you. The second thing is word of mouth is so powerful. And 98% of small and mid-sized companies will actually tell you that their number one way of acquiring new customers is word of mouth, but less than 3% of them will tell you, can actually give you a strategy they use for word of mouth marketing. Social selling is a tremendous word-of-mouth tactic. You might call it a strategy or a campaign, but the bottom line is it's word of mouth because it's getting your voice out there touch by touch by touch, point by point, and it's a very, very non-invasive matter. And it's very, its cost is time, so the more efficient you can get at it, the better. So that was 3.
Nicely done, nicely done. Rachel, do you have some talking points as we have the last couple minutes, or?
No, the only thing that I really want to just remind people is talk to your existing customers. I think it's not scary, and you'll learn so much, and it will definitely guide your social selling program and get it off to a winning start, because you'll know right away what works and what doesn't, what platforms they want to be talked to on. So I definitely recommend starting small, like Daniel mentioned, and talk to your customers.
So I think you might have thrown me the softball there, Rachel, but I'm putting out a thing called iSocial Talks that I will plug here as my way of kind of talking with and kind of communicating with the customers, very similar to doing a video series on questions that I get, questions that we get from customers, questions that we hear in Twitter chats, and really the idea there is I want to create the conversation, not really tell people what they're doing. I think that's a real big talking point to this. And as we jump out, thank everyone in the community. We've had numerous tons of people jumping through. John Golden, Jim Canto, John McCormick, Terry. We had Patricia Malavar. We've had when I ran the stats for last week's chat, it was funny. We had over 25% of our guests or people jumping in our community outside the United States. So I would like to give a shout out to the non-North America. I hate time zones. If you saw the graphics that I sent out this week, I think I got the time zones wrong 3 times. it helps because I live in Arizona and we don't believe in them. Yeah, it just screws me up more. But those of you that are on different time zones and joining us, or maybe you're watching the recap, the YouTube video, we really appreciate the community. This is week 14. We're getting an onslaught of guest requests and people that want to come on as guests, so we are building out that calendar as well, which is a lot of fun. And last but not least, I want to thank you, Daniel, for joining us today. Awesome insights. I think you went way past your quota. I had multiple people that were replying back to you when you said, I hope I gave one good nugget, and they were telling you that that wasn't the case. So,
Did they say I didn't give one, or that I gave more?
I'll tell you that offline. No.
Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate it. Hey, everybody out there listening, thanks. It's been a lot of fun, and we could talk about this forever, but you know what? We got to keep a few secrets, Brian. So make them call you. Part of the social selling is, if you really want to know what's up, call Brian.
Yeah, there you go. See, there's the leadership buy-in.
Did I just do that? Did I just do that? All right.
I have to make my boss look good, right? Isn't that my motto there? I need to find ways to make my boss look good.
Hey, I work for the employees work for us, right? We're just a big team. All right, guys. Hey, it's been fun.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.